this out to all sorts of folks in his world. And two, selfishly, I just think Burt is one of the most fascinating humans I have ever met. And I would love to have this conversation forever. With that, before we get really crazy.
You're going to talk forever, for God's sake. Why don't you shut up and let's get on with it? What?
There's a mic behind you.
What?
There's a mic behind you. I think in the seat.
No, it's here and it's here. Oh. You don't know the setup here?
I thought there was another mic, isn't there? Yeah, there's another mic. Oh, there is
Where?
another mic. Yeah, it's behind you. Here, let's look. Maybe it's on the side. There it is.
Oh!
We got the beer.
Oh, I got a. And are the batteries gone on this one too?
No, batteries aren't gone on that one.
Who wants beer?
Gotta turn it on.
Does this one work?
Yeah. It works. It works. Now shut up and Burt will take over. Give Burt a hand.
Okay. Sorry, Nick, but you repeated some things so many times that I actually understood a couple of them.
Good. That's a good thing. It takes a bit.
You want me to start with a real brief synopsis of my background and why I'm in Coeur d'Alene?
Yes.
Well, I mean, we can start there if you'd like. Let's go there.
I mean, you're supposed to run this. You're supposed to give me questions, and I thought I was going to wait another hour before you asked me a question. For God's sake.
It's like 6:35. I mean, we're spot on. So, Burt, tell me, why did you choose Coeur d'Alene, and why are you here?
Well, first of all, I labored in the ugliest desert in California, not the one with palm trees, but what we call the high desert. It's the same desert that Las Vegas is in, but just the western edge of it. I did that for 46 years, including 7 years working for the Air Force during the Vietnam War. And then I founded 2 different companies. One that did home-built airplanes and one that did airplanes for everybody else in the world. And the 49th one of those, I'm talking about 49 manned research airplanes in 46 years. That's a record I think will never be surpassed. The reason that's possible, there's absolutely nothing else to do in Mojave, California. And I managed to get people around me to work as hard as I did. The 49th was a flying car that didn't get completed, but it did make its first flight. And I worked so damn hard on that thing on my last 4 or 5 months up there, or down there in Mojave, that I was totally burned out. I didn't know anything about Coeur d'Alene except my retired corporate secretary told me this is a good place to retire to. But I didn't know this was a high-tech place. I thought I was going to come up here and be a bunch of backwoods guys that are cutting down trees. I really didn't. I didn't know.
Dirt roads and riding horses.
My wife and I packed up all this stuff in pods, containers, and I didn't even look in the rearview mirror as we drove away from Mojave for that 20-hour drive to come up here. But all of a sudden, I met some people that were absolutely unbelievable. A couple of people that I still think are the smartest people I've ever met. One is Brent Reagan. I don't know, Brent, are you here? Oh, he's heard me before. But I found everybody so friendly and so trustworthy. It seemed like everybody that I'd meet, I would trust them to look after my house if I left. And that's, to me, is weird when you come from California. I mean, I just found this place to be, I guess weird is a good description, but it was just friggin' unbelievable, really. And 11 years later, we're still here, and we love the place. And I did get involved with your first big think.
Yeah.
I used to give talks. Started doing them after the Voyager flight, which is in 1986, and especially after our space program, the first space program. Other people claim they're first later, but 2004, we flew 3 of the world's 5 space flights.
And hold on for a second.
And that's, excuse me,
the whole world, correct?
the whole world,
Yeah.
but my program was totally non-government. The damn government didn't even know about it until we rolled it outside. So anyway, I had a hell of a lot of fun, and I was burned out, and frankly, I wanted to put my feet up. I knew I could only play golf half a year up here, but I had, my low handicap was 8.3, so I'm not a duffer. But nowadays, I play from the women's tees. Okay, but anyway, I'm here. Another little thing I wanted to mention is that a long time ago, my brother, when he retired from the Air Force, he followed me to that ugly little desert town. Dick, you want to wave? I think a lot of you know my brother.
Hi there.
Yeah. Okay. Now, something that I'm very, very proud of, and I worked really hard on Dick to move up here. I told him that dying in Mojave is redundant. And I finally succeeded within the last year or so, and he and his lovely wife, Chris, now live within 0.2 of a mile of me. I'm on a, well, the reason I have this fabulous house is I managed to, well, actually the reason is that this is something I'm not supposed to talk about, but about 1/3 of what I did on my scale composites company actually were military things that we do in buildings without windows.
Yeah.
Because I'm not supposed to use the C word. Okay? And my company became very valuable to an aerospace prime, and they bought it. And because of that, I have a beautiful home up on exit 17, and it's just my wife and I, Tanya. She's down caring for her very sick mother in Southern California this week. But I found to my surprise that my daughter and my son both decided that they also didn't like California. And Jeff and Dawn, are you here?
Up in the back.
I didn't see Dawn. They and their families moved to Coeur d'Alene. My first granddaughter was born during that 9-day flight in 1986 when the Voyager flew around the world unrefueled, and as it flew over the Philippines, I became a grandfather. And my granddaughter is a resident of Coeur d'Alene now. Whitney, are you here? First of all, I'm sorry, but with these lights, I can't see you at all. And then I found out that my first wife wanted to be with her kids, and just recently she moved to Coeur d'Alene. So I don't know whether I should be blamed or applauded, but I've been a small part of the reason that this community has grown by 40%. And of course, a lot of people don't like that because we pay a lot more for lumber and everything, but at any rate, we're kind of a big happy family that lives in the community, and I've never ever been this close to my family as I have become the last couple of years. So that's essentially, just a snapshot. If you do 49 airplanes, can you quit there? 50 is such a round number.
Yeah.
Again, very briefly, I have designed 2 different airplanes that have not been built yet. But if I can get them, well, first of all, I'm too old and tired. I've had some recent real big health problems. In fact, if I climb those stairs to get out of here, I'll be real tired. If I can get them built, I'll build them right in my hangar at Coeur d'Alene Airport. And I think they may be judged as breakthrough type airplanes. I don't like to do a new project if it's boring. And of the 392 airplanes I've designed, and 49 of them have done manned experimental flight testing, we had a lot of requests from customers, and I would sometimes have a big stack of prospective customers that wanted me to build something and test something for them. And I'd always go through that stack. I knew I didn't want to grow the company so much because it wouldn't be efficient. But I'd always go through that stack, and I wouldn't pick the one which would make me the most money. I picked the one that would be the most fun. Now, my companies have been owned by, or partially owned or owned by 5 different corporations, or, excuse me, people and corporations. And I've always been able to look at them straight in the face and say, my #1 priority. Now, anybody here that's in business that works with their parent or their boss, you tell me what you have to say when you say my #1 priority is to make the biggest profit that I can for you. I never said that. I said my #1 priority is for my employees to have fun, the F word. I always had better health care than Lockheed or Boeing or Beechcraft because my #2 priority is that I wanted my employees' families to have fun. And you know, and to, if they work like me, their job is totally secure. I didn't lay off people. I kept them to do the next project. And I'd look at them and straight in the face, I said, my #3 priority is to make a profit for you, sir. And the justification I had for that is I've looked at a lot of companies that go bankrupt. And in every case, I found that before they went bankrupt, they stopped having fun. Hey, that's just common sense. All right,
No.
that's all.
Now we're done.
I'm tired of holding this thing up.
Well, first off, I'm excited that your family's moved here. I think that's awesome, because I remember when we first did the...
But by the way, I'll give a pump. My granddaughter just opened a new store on Sherman.
Come on. What's it called?
You have to walk in there to find out what you buy there. It's called Manna.
Amazing.
And it's kind of across the street from Crafted.
Perfect.
But so she actually runs a business here.
I love it.
And the
Is that your first business?
no,
Oh.
she had the same business on the Oregon coast. Another little thing, you know, it's hard to move here because there weren't jobs here, right? Well, my daughter's husband got a job here. He was HR director of some company in Central California and whatever, but he is now the HR director of Coeur d'Alene Public Schools.
Oh, cool.
So he has a really neat job right here in town.
I love it.
Yeah.
Well, you mentioned fun and your staff. I have a plethora of notes of different things that I'd researched, and I've talked with you at different points, but you mentioned with your employees, not only do you want them to have fun, but you want them to take risk. Like that was a thing that you were big on, was baking risk into the job and kind of an edge of danger of people pushing the envelope. How did you maintain that commitment with your staff to fun? Because for some people, they can get distracted. Like, how do you keep a tight team? Because you said you can do anything with a tight team that's working hard.
The best way for me to answer that is to mention if you're in a research company, particularly aerospace, you may say what you do is R&D, research and development. And you'll say that as if they're the same thing. You're doing research and development, right? Research, you spend money, and development, you make money selling something, right? Well, that always bothered me because it didn't meet with what I felt my goals were to be the most efficient and the most fun place to work in the world. So I came up with a definition. Now, this is my definition, okay? And that is, if you think you're doing research, you're not doing research unless at least half of the people think that what you're trying to achieve, the breakthrough you're trying to do, half the people have to think, well, that's impossible. Mm-hmm. Impossible. When JFK said 3 weeks after the Gagarin flight in 1961, I think, that, oh, we're going to go to the moon, land with a man, bring him back safe, and we'll do it before 1970. Well, of course, everybody in aerospace was jumping up and down. Multi-year funding, right? We don't have to get more money every September at the fiscal year, right? Wow. The president has given us a goal that means we'll get funded all the way till 1970. Hooray! We can do it. Okay? But if you'd have gone right then and took just about anybody, whether he was an engineer, shop guy, manager, say a secretary, just anybody, top to bottom, if you grab that person and say, I want to have a personal discussion with you, and I won't tell anybody what you tell me, but I'm just curious. You go into a room and you close the door and say that nothing will leave this room. And you look that person straight in the eye and you say, what is your net worth? Everything that you own, what's your worth? What do you have? And then you ask them, would you bet everything that you have? Would you actually bet that we'll actually send a man to the moon and back by 1970? Right? Think about it. You would get a small minority. Not even my definition of 50% have to think it's possible. So the bottom, I'm almost getting to your question.
You're fine.
And here it is, here it
I have like
is.
100
No,
questions.
here it is. Taking risks. If you don't take risks, you will do something that's boring by just copying last year's model. And everybody does that. I don't care if you're Lockheed or General Motors. Somebody else will come out with a better car, you'll copy it and make it a little better. That's not a breakthrough. That's an evolutionary improvement, right?
Yeah.
A lot of what I did, certainly my space program, and at least 5 or 6 other of those 49 are considered by historians breakthroughs. What's a breakthrough? It's something that no one expects, but after it happens, you realize that's a breakthrough. Now, I want everybody out here to think of the most interesting breakthrough that they can think of. You got it? I will tell you that likely, before it was even considered a breakthrough, it was considered nonsense. Nonsense. So, in answer to your question, oh, I forgot the answer. The people that have breakthroughs are the weird guys like me that have confidence in nonsense. Because if you don't have confidence in nonsense, you won't even try to do something. Right? If you see something in front of you and you try to do it anyway, you're unusual. Especially if you're betting the company's money, like Boeing does every time they come up with a new airliner. If it seems nonsense, there's no way they'll do it, and therefore their new airliner will not be a breakthrough, and that's why there's 767, 787, and you know it looked just like, they look just like the 707 from the 50s, okay? They won't take risks.
I mean, you built the first plane that went around the world without stopping. You cracked private space.
Without refueling too, yeah. Yeah.
You built the world's largest plane with the Stratolauncher. It's your design.
No.
No, the Stratolauncher wasn't the world's.
I did preliminary designs for what became Stratolaunch for 21 years for various, I can't tell you the customers, for 21 years before I retired. And at various times there, we were nurturing customers. We said, we think we can actually do this. If we take 2 or 3 747s and take their engines and landing gear, whatever, and it's just a structure. You know, we actually had confidence in nonsense that our little company which didn't have that many employees. I think, well, what was it at that time? Maybe 280 or 300 or something, right? That we could go out and build the world's largest airplane. And every one of the customers, prospective customers, didn't have confidence in the nonsense that this little company in Mojave, California could actually build the world's largest airplane, right? And it didn't happen. I got up here to Coeur d'Alene. And it wasn't but 2 or 3 months after I was here, I got a call from the president of Scaled. And he says, Burt, we now have a customer for this world's largest airplane.
You need to come back to Mojave.
And that customer is Paul Allen, the co-founder of Microsoft, who had become a very good friend of mine. I worked with him on Proteus to do broadband on demand before we had fiber in the ground. When I say I worked with him, I never had a big contract. I never had a contract with him, but I nurtured that relationship, right? And of course, that relationship led to the fact that when he was a kid, he'd go to the Apollo launches. You know, he's 10 years younger than me. So he's a space nut. So he's the guy that I went to when I thought that I could send a man out of the atmosphere in an airplane we built in Mojave, essentially our little tiny low-cost program that's equivalent to what the Air Force and NASA did in the late 50s to 60s with the X-15. It launched off a B-52, went out of the atmosphere, and it was actually in competition with Mercury Redstone to be America's first astronaut. But anyway, you said that would drive me away back to Mojave.
Oh, no.
Hell no.
That was a joke that they got the contract.
Hell no. I'll tell you, once you live in Mojave, no, excuse me, no, I said that wrong. Once you live in Coeur d'Alene, especially just off exit 17, where you're looking at this absolutely, wasn't that lake pretty today? And 2 nights ago, wasn't that a cool sunset? Oh God, I've taken 10,000 pictures. Well, anyway, once you, there's no way you come back. They begged, and I said, no, I'm not going to do anything for Scaled. In fact, there's rules about, oh, you can't do that for 5 years, you know, this stuff, the Northrop rules. But I actually worked for Paul Allen, not for Scaled Composites, on Stratolaunch. And when you say work, my job was, I was on the board of directors of Paul Allen's program to build the world's largest airplane. So I had to go to Mojave to board meetings occasionally, twice a year or so, you know, not a lot. I was a bad guy there. I would look at their designs, and there was only 2 people on the board that were technical, that knew anything about the details of airplane design. So I became known as the wrench thrower. I'd look at that and said, they're just doing a preliminary design of this thing. By the way, they threw out my drawings and started over because, you know, that's what engineers do. Their pride in authorship, right? Now the thing is really ugly, but but they were doing things like the turbofan was blowing directly on the horizontal tail. And I don't know any airplane that does that, but they say it'll be okay because we've done some analysis and found out that it mixes with the other air so it won't burn it. okay? And they did some analysis that shows that, well, that air is moving faster hitting that tail. And they proved that that faster moving air wouldn't break the tail off. So they were actually going to do that. Now, of course, anybody that knows anything about airplanes and flutter and whatever realize that tail is going to not just take it, but it's going to do this and fall off, right? So anyway, I became the hated guy because I was slowing up progress. And I really enjoyed that job because I didn't have any responsibility. I was just throwing out, I was throwing monkey wrenches, but I wasn't designing anything because I hated the design they came up with. So that's my part of Stratolaunch, and I think it's made 4 flights now.
Fourth flight was 2 weeks ago, actually.
Yeah.
Okay, I never did go down for that. I figure the videos are better than being there.
Yeah. What does it take to maintain confidence in nonsense? Because
you just got to be, you got to use it to have a breakthrough just once, and from then on,
you're hooked.
You're hooked. Yeah, you realize that, hey, I tried that even though it was nonsense, and God damn it, we got a breakthrough, and it's a big part of my L word. You know what that is? Burt Rutan's legacy. I'm really focused on legacy right now because with the help of my wife and daughter and son, together we're doing a project called BRAB, Burt Rutan Autobiography. And it's not a book.
No.
Because a book can't have
Audio.
10,000 photographs. A book can't have 1,000 videos. A book can't have 1,000 really fun little stories. Some of them funny, some of them tragic, some of them, a lot of them are really interesting to read, even if you don't know anything about airplanes. So this is a tremendous project. And I worked very hard on it. And I have to admit, though, just recently, just in the last month, really, I realized that this thing has 85 chapters, by the way. I wrote one of them complete, and it was 90 pages.
One chapter.
One of the 85 was 90 pages. It was about the antics of that 2 years that I spent in Kansas working for Jim Beatty. Now, not too many people know about Jim Beatty, but when you read chapter 18, you'll know all the details, and I certainly wouldn't put it out if he was still alive. But here's the problem that I ran into, Nick. The problem is it's pretty apparent to me that I cannot finish this with all the stuff in it that I want. And it's not, I like new pictures and videos real quick, but I'm talking about the stories. I have interviewed 90 people. Sometimes I'll sit with them for hours. And I got a little program called Just Press Record, and then I get a transcript, right? So I have a couple hundred hours at least of just sitting, talking to people. So some people that I worked with when I was a kid, and they're on cannulas and barely can breathe. They're going to die next week, or next month. A couple of them did. But I got to interview them, and I want to tell their stories. Everybody that I thought was important that I met, I'm going to have a bio on them so that the reader of BRAB doesn't have to do his own research. It'll be a little bio. They don't have a bio, I write it for them. So bottom line, I concluded I can't get this done before I die.
So what do we do?
Well, I'm going to do my best to make what's there more possible for my wife. And my wife is quite a bit younger than me, right? My wife and my son and my daughter, I'm going to make it, what I'm focusing on right now is to make it so that they can do a better job of finishing it. It won't be the same product, but I don't care if it's rough as hell, but I want the historians to have all this information out there.
It's a playground.
Because if I don't put it out there, it's gone.
Yeah.
You know, it's like your great-grandfather has this stuff in a trunk, and it's really interesting stuff. If he dies, you throw the trunk away, right? Nobody gets to look at it, and it's interesting stuff. Well, I've got a bunch of interesting stuff. I had Curtis LeMay once come into my office at Rutan Aircraft Factory, and he wanted to private talk with me. General Curtis LeMay. And I took him into a little private room. And I could tell that he just did something intentional that, for me to think it was unintentional. He kind of leaned forward, he pulled open his coat, and he showed this pistol there, or this, you know, a gun. I never found out why he visited me. And I had not just him, but a senator that had been essentially kicked out of the Senate on his way back to California. He did the same thing. He just, I just want to talk to you, right? It's possible that it's related. I don't know this, but it might be possible to relate it to I've always had hobbies so that I have a way to cleanse my mind of airplanes. Yeah. It's something I do late at night or maybe on Sundays or whatever. And one of my hobbies was to solve the JFK assassination.
And?
I quit after 8 years. After spending a year and a half actually scared, and we don't have time now to tell you why I was scared, but I was scared for about a year and a half.
Is it in Brab?
That's a tough call, but I think I will put it in Brab.
Good.
It's not a political thing, and you don't in Brab want to reveal that you're a conservative or a liberal, because these guys nowadays are so divided that they hate each other. And I don't want people to hate me, so there's no politics, right? But the JFK, and another thing, my study of how the big stone monuments could have been built, because I studied that for 7 years and concluded there's no friggin' way they were done with copper chisels and stone hammers. Absolutely impossible.
And?
So there's a real small thing on my website. The website hadn't been updated in a long time.
It talks about
my son's been busy. It's just burtrutan.com.
Yeah, it has Brab on there and a couple other things.
Yeah, it has a description of what Brab is.
Yeah, it's
sure.
got three chapters.
And it may even have the table of contents.
Yeah. What
Yeah.
are the...
But anyway, before I leave JFK, I'll just tell you that the reason I quit, by the way, I wasn't scared at the last of those 8 years. I was scared in the middle of it. And the reason I quit, Now, don't get me wrong, I don't claim to have solved the JFK assassination. But if you got a 5,000 piece puzzle out in front of you, and you work on it for years, you know, you do the outsides because they're square, right? Or, but you work on it, you move in, and all of a sudden, in your mind, you solve the puzzle. You know what it shows, you know what it says, right? Yep. Now, do you finish it? Why bother? You know, you have solved the thing. It may not be correct, but it doesn't really matter. But in your mind, you've solved it. And that's where I got to with JFK assassination. I believe I know exactly why he was killed. And the players, which, by the way, are so much more interesting than anything that happened in Dealey Plaza at 10:30 on November 22nd, 1963, right? A lot of people study this, oh, the bullet could have come, you know, that didn't hold my interest very long. But when I said, listen, I know this won't be solved. In other words, it won't be a smoking guns and all these people will go to jail. And the reason is because they put out information such that probably 80% of the information that's out there is planted disinformation. Nice. So they could overpower you in a lawsuit or, you know, in a trial. Yeah. But I figured, well, that, you know, obviously that's not going to happen. What was it, more than, what, 55 years ago, whatever, a long time ago. But the bottom line, to me, I wanted to know in my mind, I wanted to solve the world's most important murder mystery. Mm-hmm. And I got to the point that in my mind, I think I know. Mm-hmm.
You talk about having a hobby to keep your brain fresh. You talk about the need to have confidence in nonsense. And in this room, like, who has an idea for a business, like an invention, a thing? Like, stick up your hands.
I can't see you.
You have to have nonsense to do those things. And it's easy to get ground down when you're working on something that you believe the world needs. And especially if it's nonsensical. It's like a crazy big idea.
And if you try, I mean, people that succeed in doing a new business, it might be their third or fourth attempt.
Right. Because you said once you have like one breakthrough, all of a sudden it's like your catnip. It's like it's addicting. What do you have any like routines, habits, like obsessive statements you say to yourself? Like thoughts? Because sometimes, I don't know about you, but like I have things I say to myself to keep myself like, keep going, keep on the rails.
I don't watch a lot of porn.
That's cool. I don't either. But, so that's one that keeps you on the rails?
Well, I'm sorry, was that a joke?
I don't know. That's one tip. Second tip. Is there anything that you do to keep your brain in a state of mind besides the hobbies? Do you have like mantras that you like to say to yourself? You don't watch a lot of porn. You solve JFK's mysteries. But
here,
okay.
I didn't solve it. I don't claim to have solved it.
Okay. But do you have, I have a funny Kennedy family story too, I'll tell you. It's actually really funny. But before I tell you the story, like, do you have any little mantras, things that you hold on to? Because I know the days, I have a friend who said this to me about being an entrepreneur. Some days you wouldn't trade it for the world. Other days you would trade it for a warm Diet Coke. It sucks on some days, and it's hard in that moment you push through it. But what do you do to push through?
Well, not sure what your question. You said, do you have mantras, and then what do you do to push through? Which question do you want me to answer?
Both, yeah.
Okay, the first answer is no.
No mantras. Interesting. What does your self-talk look like in your head?
You know, I have so much things that I would love to fill my head with. For example, the antics of everyone else besides me in 2004, of folk like Richard Branson and Jeff Bezos, you know him? And who's the other one? Elon Musk. And the things that they're doing, you know, of course, Musk is the one that did the real breakthrough first. Not just him, though. Bezos also landed rockets on the tail and reused them. That's the only big breakthrough in rocketry in my lifetime. And that's quite a big thing to say. Everything else is evolution. The fact that they're reusing boosters. Well, of course, Musk needs to do that because he wants to colonize Mars. So when the big asteroid hits Earth next time, our species will survive. But watching these guys, like, I don't know how long ago when like 7 or 8 days apart, or it was, Bezos says, I'm going to go to space in my rocket. I've tested a lot about, and he gets in there, and it was a big press event, right? And all the cameras show him getting out, and I don't know, one guy paid a fortune for one of the seats and whatever, which probably confused Sir Richard. But Sir Richard says, he can't be, quietly, he didn't tell anybody, that son of a bitch can't be first. Well, Sir Richard first was in 2004, 13 years ago. Well, I'm not going to mention that. So Sir Richard, in a vehicle, in a mothership that was never, ever intended to fly the public, there weren't even adequate drawings made to build it because he didn't pay for them. He used that thing and a spaceship that was a replacement for the one that crashed. The one that crashed was a clearest pilot error accident you can imagine. There's a video showing the co-pilot who was supposed to keep that re-entry feather thing locked, and he just reaches up and he says 8/10 Mach number. He wasn't supposed to do it until 1.4 at the earliest. He says 8/10 Mach number, and he reached up and undid it. And within 2 seconds, he was dead because the thing exploded, or didn't explode, wasn't propulsion. It was overloaded and there's pieces all over the place. The pilot of it, it wasn't his job to unlock the feather. He miraculously survived. Went to the hospital, but he's been flying spaceships again. So Sir Richard did some things that the FAA would never approve if it was certified like, and that is he got in that thing and he couldn't fly passengers, paying passengers like Bezos did, because Bezos had flown 11 flights, no problems, and the FAA said, okay, you can fly paying passengers. FAA looked at Richard Branson at what he had and said, no, you can't fly. We have to approve for you to fly the public. So Branson flew just his own employees. And by the way, he did not go to space because they built that thing so heavy it wouldn't get there.
But he got the press coverage. That's what he was shooting for.
Well, I'll tell you, during a lot of this antics of the 4 people that are doing non-government space flights, okay, And by the way, commercial is not the best word to use for that. It's non-government. If the government doesn't buy it, pay for it, and oversee it, then I call it a non-government manned space activity, right? Now, of course, the government did fund for his Dragon to go to the International Space Station, right? Well, that wasn't a non-government flight. That was just like Lockheed decades ago gets paid by NASA to, to do space flights. The big difference, though, and Musk did it later, is he couldn't go to the space station. Hell, the government was not going to let him do that unless they oversee it and regulate it and whatever. But he put 4 people in his Dragon and just went to orbit for a few days. I thought that was really cool. The government couldn't tell him to not do that and couldn't even monitor it. And I'll tell you, Musk is a real sharp guy. I knew him when he had 15 employees. Long before Tesla, but when he was trying to do the Falcon 1. And, I would end up taking 15 minutes to describe that, so you have to wait for Brab.
So you don't have mantras.
The way you described it, no, I don't feel a need to fill my mind with something else because there's too much stuff out there, for God's sakes.
Maybe let me ask it a better way. When you have a setback or something that's really difficult, when you're building rocket ships and new airplanes and something doesn't work right, what do you rely upon as self-talk or habits to say screw it and then get back to it? If any.
Say the first part of that.
When you have something that's hard or a setback.
When I have a setback.
A setback.
Okay.
In your work.
A failure to reach whatever.
Yeah.
No, you're not talking necessarily about a tragedy, just a setback.
Not a tragedy.
Okay.
Do you have any habits or kind of self-talk things that get you back in the game if you feel knocked off your legs?
The basic thing is just common sense. Common sense means you look at if this happens, the upside might be minor, but if the other thing happens, the downside's huge. So in general, unless you're trying to get a breakthrough, I know someone who prides himself in having confidence in nonsense, saying that an important thing is common sense. I probably confused half of you, including me. You got a question I haven't seen you looking at your notes. You're just pulling this out of your.
No, I have questions in my notes too.
Oh, you got it. Oh, you got them on your phone.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm not.
Okay.
So one of the questions that I find interesting, I want to know from you, is what is something you believe is possible that others don't and hasn't been done yet?
What something that I believe is possible? You're talking about space?
Anything.
Oh, what is possible but hadn't been done?
That others don't believe is possible.
Others, yeah, of course. That's a good question.
Thank you.
Because on the eve of the first non-government manned space flight, SpaceShipOne, which was the night before, was the 20th of June of 2004. I invited to my home, because they were in town, Paul Allen and Richard Branson, both of them. My home, by the way, was on the cover of Popular Science in November of '89, if you want to follow it through. It's a pyramid. Okay. So anyway, Paul Allen shows up in his commercial version of the Beast. You know what that is? I got a chance to ride in it. You know what a Beast is, a presidential armored. Paul Allen's Beast, if he goes somewhere, they send this thing ahead. You sit in the middle of it. It's just one abreast. You're sitting in the middle. And you have all kinds of things in it that, you know, he's Paul Allen. Hey, co-founder of Microsoft. Hell, he knows some shit about that. This thing has some antennas on it, but there's 3 seats behind it, and then a driver and a co-pilot, I guess you'd call it. He shows up in this Beast, right? Pulls into my driveway. Come on inside. So I had a PowerPoint, and I wanted to make a point with him. I really am going to answer your question. I think you'll like the answer.
I trust you. It's a fun ride, always.
Now, these billionaires like to show up each other. So Sir Richard Branson went down to Los Angeles, and he hired a jet ranger. And he drove down to Los Angeles. And he got in his jet ranger, and it flew him to my house in Mojave. Now, yeah, I had a helipad there because in '93, I had this kind of desire to have a helicopter rating. You know, so I ended up buying an Enstrom from Dean Kamen. You know who Dean Kamen is, the guy that the Segway stand-up two-wheeled thing. So I put in a hexagonal, of course the pyramid's hexagonal. I put in a hexagonal concrete pad right there in front of my house, and so Branson could land his rented jet ranger on it. So it's kind of cool. Anyway, I brought him inside, and I put him down on a couch in the living room, and I've got Sir Richard Branson, me, and Paul Allen. And I pulled up the coffee table and I opened my little laptop of 2004. I forgot what kind of a laptop it was. And I brought up PowerPoint. And I said, listen, I have a question for you guys because you're both 10 years younger than me. What do you want to see? I mean, you're probably curious because you got enough money to spend on space. I think you have no idea what you want to do next year or in 5 years, do you? And I get this blank stare. Says, but I'll tell you something. If you give me a goal, and I'm going to suggest as a goal, and that is, what do you want to see happen when you're on your deathbed? In other words, what do you think can happen out there? And you guys are billionaires, you could help it happen. What do you want to see happen just before you die? I says, if you tell me that, now I have something to work with, and I can plan to get there to your desire. When you're, again, I thought, you know, Paul's already dead, but I thought both of them lived 10 years longer than me. But here's the thing. If I've got that as a goal, like Apollo, there is no more simple and clear poll as man, land on the moon, come back alive by 1970. It's really simple. But if I have a goal to get there, I have a reasonable way of planning what you need to do 10 years before that, 20 years before that. You see what I'm talking about here? And I can look at you and tell you, if that's your goal, I can tell you exactly what to do next year with your money. Now, I think the probable reason is, one, they were confused. Nobody had ever asked them a question like that, even alone. But there's another possible reason. You got Richard Branson, Paul Allen, you're Richard Branson. He's the last guy you want to know what you're going to do next year. Right? That's, hell, these 49 airplanes, almost all of them, nobody knew about them until they flew. Right? And I don't want my competition, I never went to these SAMPI or these, I never gave presentations at the show. I'm a good guy, I'm really cool, and here's what I'm doing, and here's my technology. Well, that's a stupid thing to do. You go to those things to listen and to learn from them, but you damn well don't tell them your secrets. So I think possibly the reason that there was no answer from Sir Richard and Paul Allen was they didn't want the other guy to know what they were planning. But I really don't think they had a plan.
So the answer is you won't tell me.
I forgot the question.
No, that's even better.
No, really, what was the question?
I love the story.
No, I thought, no.
No, the question was, I want to know, what do you hold as a belief that's possible, that other people don't believe is possible, and it hasn't been done yet?
Nick, I apologize.
No, never.
I lost.
That's a great story.
No, I'm 78. I do this all the time. I'm 78. I lost track. Okay, what is possible? Let me give you an example. It was possible for someone with some confidence in nonsense, someone at NASA or Lockheed or Boeing, just after the Apollo moon landings, it was possible, if they had some confidence in nonsense, for them to go out and do what Musk did just in the last 3 years, and that is bring a booster back and fill it up and reuse it. That was possible to do. And how long did it not get done? Do you know when the wheel was invented? Take a rough guess. Anybody, holler out. When was a wheel invented?
4,000 years ago. Ancient Mesopotamia.
Say it louder. I'm hard of hearing.
Ancient Mesopotamia.
Okay, Mesopotamia. And
You deserve it for sure.
And I gave the commencement address at Cal Poly.
I've always been concerned about Cal Poly because when we were there, it was such an incredible applied engineering school.
Learn by doing.
I came out of that. I got a master's degree after that. I'd already seen 50% or more of the material. And
Let me ask you, when you graduated, did they still require you to know how to weld and run a machine lathe?
Oh yeah.
Before,
Oh yeah. You had to do all the, I forget what they call those labs in your freshman year.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. We had to, because we didn't have computers yet to speak of, all that stuff, so everything was done with hand machines, lathes.
Yeah, I paid my way through college.
Yeah, so did I.
My dad later on said that he should have paid for it, but he wanted me to learn how important it is to survive and make money.
Oh yeah.
But I worked at two places. I washed dishes in the cafeteria.
Yes, so did I. Exactly what I did.
I work for foundation maintenance, so I do the refrigeration maintenance of the dorms.
Yeah. So I worked down at the service station on Marsh Street, the Arco.
Now, do you live in town here?
Yeah, I live in Wolf Lodge. I've been here for
I want to kick it off with a really, in my opinion, a fun and probably highly opinionated question.
Oh, excuse me. Before we get started,
Yes.
I have a real unusual request.
Bring it.
It'll only take probably 30, 40 seconds. I would like you to turn on the house lights and turn off these lights. And I want to stand up with my iPhone and photograph this wonderful audience.
Photos are coming out great. While he's doing this, by the way, I just want to say, this is what community should be. My dream for this space down here, we have a cigar room over there, and this is like a private bar. And the dream really was, like, I'm so tired of seeing people go out to bars and just waste their nights. And we have the inkling on the wall in there with, if you don't know who they are, it's Chesterton and Lewis and a bunch of other crazy folks. And there's so many fun conversations that happen down here of people talking about their business ideas, patents, innovations, but also talking about philosophy and ethics and religion, politics, but in a civil manner, God forbid. And you know, we don't have people vomiting on the floors or trying to punch each other.
What do you do for fun?
Yeah, I know, it's crazy, right? We create things and try and be kind to each other and listen. So I just want to encourage you, do get involved with this community, because this is not, I mean, this is special with Burt, but this is also what we're building. Is we believe, we still believe in the American dream, and we still believe there's really brilliant people like you and like me, that we have crazy ideas like Burt. Like Burt's special, but also Burt's just confident in nonsense. And when he says that, we shouldn't take it lightly. Like many of us have these things in us that we don't know where to put it. And look around the room, you just found your people. Like you weirdos showed up. And so these are the people to build the things with and to make new friends and to build companies with and spend your time with. So please get involved. Make sure you go to innovationcollective.co, talk to Kurt, talk to Morgan, talk to myself.
This was after I was working in the Air Force. I had a chance to go down to the Douglas facility. And there was a meeting down there, I went to it, right? And on the way, I'm going down a hall to find the meeting room, and the most beautiful thing I've seen in a long time went whizzing by me. Now, this was the early 70s, and you know, skirt links did this, and then in the 70s, they went, they went to about here, in, what was it, 71? That's when I married my second wife. And then they drop down now, and now it's beautiful if you're fat and wear a burqa or whatever. But anyway, this girl was really going. This was before inline skates had been invented. She was on roller skates and she was wailing. And I stopped, she went into a room. Oh, she had this cart with her she was pushing, right? She went into this room, and I stood there, I says, I wonder where she's gone. And now keep in mind, they didn't have internet, they didn't have email, they didn't have text messages, they didn't, how do you deliver a document to somebody in a big aerospace company?
And do it fast.
What?
Do it fast and audible.
Well, you go there and give it to them. A lot of people think, that's dark ages. No, this is early 70s. This girl wheeled that cart in, and she'd open it up, pick the item that this guy needed, give it to him, look down, she'd take the cart, and she'd go and deliver a couple more things in that room, and then she'd get in the hallway, and she would roller skate as fast as you could imagine with this thing. Now, this little guy with his ice chest that goes young, 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 won't go over a curb. I can guarantee you that that girl could jump over a curb. And I can guarantee you that her efficiency on delivering documents was 1,000 times better than this piece of shit. And now I'm saying that to the audience at Big Think in the theater of the college.
Yeah, that's perfect.
Right?
It was great. It was great.
And I thought,
Yeah, the guy
and of course the guy who was proud of this thing, he started to shake visibly. Remember that? And I'm thinking, you know, I kind of enjoy Big Think, but they'll never get me back again.
Oh, we bring them back just for those moments. You know the irony of that? I kid you not. That nonsensical idea that Burt made fun of, they just raised $100 million. They hold the record. Hold on, listen. They hold the record for the most fully autonomous miles for delivery now. Like, it's funny. It is funny. But yeah, Burt says what's on his mind. I will say that. And it's always very, I think they should put skirts on the robots. They've considered that ever since that conversation. No, you know, I was going to ask, when you think about people in the state of society, you've mentioned before that you feel like people aren't really pushing innovation, that people are just kind of doing incremental evolution, and that they're not doing breakthroughs, that, you know...
Who is the they you're talking about?
They, Silicon Valley, doing companies that are more about data.
You're talking about companies in Silicon Valley. Now, I got to know who you're talking about.
That's a good point. Maybe I'll ask the better question then, because I've heard you talk about some of your thoughts on it. But the better question would be this: do you think that society is innovating at a pace it should? That people are creating advancements in technology? And if yes, why? If no, why?
No.
Why?
Because the kind of people that would do what Bezos and Musk tried to do are very, very few. I would guess that the people that tried nonsense and pulled off a breakthrough, we're probably talking about 1/100% at the most of what you said was people.
Is it born, the characteristic to be that way, or is
It makes you wonder, what if those people didn't exist?
Yeah.
You know what? We'd be hunter-gatherers still, wouldn't we? We would not have yet invented agriculture.
Yeah. Yeah.
I've been studying lately with some wonderful videos on Australia. And do you know that while the rest of the world had invented agriculture, Australia didn't? They instead took a different tactic, and they invented ways to make nature produce food, not agriculture where you plant things and dig them up, and see what I'm saying? And I find that absolutely fascinating. If you find things like that fascinating, the movie Contact, or the movie William Buckley, not the one you're thinking of, and the movies, the 4-part series called First Footprints. If somebody comes over to my house, in my home theater and has some time. First of all, I will show them music that I thought would never happen, and that is something better than Elvis Presley. And I will show them these wonderful documentaries about Australia. For a lot of my life, I did grow the sideburns out of respect for Elvis Presley. I was pissed off when the Beatles came along. I really was. That happened while I was in college. And in 1969, I was sent on by the Air Force to go around the world and to brief, face-to-face briefing, every F-4 Phantom pilot in the world. And I had no idea how many there were, but I told the four-star general, General Momire, that should be done. Because we invented a way for them not to have loss of control accidents. The Air Force had lost 61 airplanes that didn't have bullet holes in them. What if we lost 61 new fighters now? We'd stop flying fighters. But anyway, I found myself on the weekends for fun because I was off. I'm in downtown Tokyo. Now, I know, maybe it's not true anymore, but in those days, most Americans thought all the Japanese people looked alike. Right? Well, how do you guys tell each other apart? You all look the same. Now, they probably feel the same about us. But anyway, I had people come up to me and genuinely think that I was Elvis Presley.
But a major day.
It happened 3 or 4 times. And on the last one, I thought of what to say. Thank you very much. Okay, so I continued to wear sideburns, and of course they're not black anymore. And the thing I'm finding now, though, here in 2022, is the people that really understand the excitement that we had about Elvis Presley music, they're dead now. So you might wonder, well, Burt, why do you still have these sideburns? And I'll tell you the answer. If you look at my right sideburn, can you see it?
Yes, it's perfect.
No. Well, take a picture of it, yes.
I gotta miss this. There we go.
Did anybody here notice something about my right sideburn?
It's a destination.
It is in exactly the shape of Idaho. And I'm getting to the age where I might find myself lost. You know, my dad did that when he was in his 90s. He took a drive and got lost.
Just return you to your face. Go home.
All I got to say is Canada's here and take me right there. And they can take me home.
They're going to take you to the insane asylum. I live here. I live here. It's too funny. So I want to have Q&A because there's, I bet, a ton of questions. And after we're done,
many questions. What's a ton? There's 2,000 pounds? Or are you talking about a metric ton?
Just many.
Okay, good.
Okay, many questions. And after we are done,
I don't like to see people get sloppy.
I apologize. After we're done, we're still going to keep the space open so you can stay. We're not going to chase you out. I want you to meet each other, ask questions, connect, have fun, please do. But we'll keep the time open for some questions. I have one final question from my side before I turn it over to the crowd. We have the Wright brothers. You have Musk. You have Woz over there. There is Paul Allen and Gates over there. There's Tesla around the corner. There's Ford. There's Edison.
Yes, Edison.
Bell is over there. Many of these people we put on the walls because they're inspiring and they're, heroes, inspiring heroes, interesting people. There's many of them. I pointed out those specific individuals for a reason, though. You're on a list with those people, Nikola Tesla included, but also you're on the same list with Leonardo da Vinci, Archimedes. It's of the 20 greatest engineers of all time in the history of humanity. I don't know if you know it, but it's on the internet. I found this about. And I asked this question. Those are heroes to many of us. Who are your heroes? Who are people you looked up to when you were getting kind of crazy ideas?
That's a great question because I have a good answer.
Perfect.
In 2003 was the 100th anniversary of the Wright brothers' flight, right? By the way, if you read in a history book, the Wright brothers' flight was 180-some feet, and my airplane is longer than that. That's no, that is a lie. That's not true. The Wright brothers' first flight was not that flight. Keep in mind what they were trying to do, which was very important, was to demonstrate sustained, powered, controlled flight. And then they would claim to have been that they demonstrated the first real airplane. Okay? Sustained, powered, controlled flight. That first flight, actually there's a picture of it that somebody took, and they got Wilbur standing there, and I think it's Orville flying. It come off that skid thing, and it goes, whoa, whoa, and crashed, right? It didn't get very far. The Wright brothers didn't think that was proving anything. They realized it was not controlled. True, the pilot had 0 time in type. So now they did something really stupid. They fixed the minor damage, and they tried again. And the stupid thing they did was the pilot for the second attempt was not the same pilot. So they put another guy that had 0 time in type. Of course, they both had flown the gliders, right? And it got a little further. Crash. They looked at each other and it says, "We have proved nothing. We haven't proved that we have a powered airplane that can sustain flight." I think it was the 4th flight. They had some wind, but in spite of the wind in front of them, they flew 858, I may not remember exactly, 858 feet, and they flew for, I think it was more than a minute. And actually, through the air, because it was doing this, they probably flew 1,500 feet. And they looked at each other, and they shook hands, and they said, "That right there, we can claim that we invented the first powered, sustained, controllable airplane." And while they were shaking hands, a wind came up and flipped the thing over and broke it up. And it was never flown again. The Smithsonian was pissed off because they had spent a lot of money with a guy called Langley in his attempts to do. He launched this thing off of a houseboat, and it fell into the water you know. And they didn't want to give credit for inventing the airplane to people that came out of a bicycle shop in Dayton, Ohio. Bicycle shop! Hell, Glenn Curtis, who did a hell of a lot more than the Wright brothers, had a motorcycle shop, so he had good engines. By the way, I told this story in accepting the Wright brothers trophy, and I'm probably the only one who got up in front to accept the prestigious Wright brothers trophy in Washington, D.C. I'm probably the only one that got up there and trashed the Wright brothers. And I'll tell you something, if you're interested in my talks, probably the best one to watch. First of all, you can Google Burt Rutan talks and you get all kinds of stuff, right?
All kinds of stuff.
But let me tell you, if you want to watch a Burt Rutan talk that I'm really proud of, I did a super job with. By the way, I just had dinner with a NASA administrator, and I trashed him too. You can get access to this on my website, burtrutan.com, or it'll come up. Trevor Budge. Trevor, are you here? Holler. No. He's not here? Okay, Trevor helped me build the ski gull, so he posted that talk on his website. Budge. Look for the Trevor Budge channel, and you'll see a lot of ski gull flight tests, but you'll also see that wonderful 50-minute talk of me accepting the Wright Brothers trophy.
Okay.
So I think you can find it by Googling around, but you get up my website, Trevor's channel, or whatever. Yeah. It shows me in a damn tuxedo. I look like a penguin.
That's a rare moment. That's a rare moment. Well, I want to ask, we've probably got some time for some questions from the crowd. Who has a question?
I do over here.
Yeah, so I saw the first two hands, like here in the middle.
Tell you, we don't need a mic if you yell.
Yeah. Say your name too.
I'm Al Hedman, and I got two questions. Years ago, I saw Bill Nye the Science Guy. Somebody asked him, what's the biggest thing you could think of that'd be the biggest change in the world? And he said, better battery technology. What do you think is down the road for batteries that are going to be really good? And can anybody build a scale battery for off-grid power storage?
Well, first of all, they're going to have to get a hell of a lot better, at least a factor of 15, before you can make a decent airplane with them. When I say a decent airplane, is an airplane that'll fly as far as my little Cherokee, my wife's little Cherokee, or, to compete with gas engines. Another thing, we don't want to get rid of fossil fuels. We don't want to get rid of putting CO2 in the atmosphere, because, at one time, we got down to 180 parts per million, that low. And at 150 parts per million or less, plants die. And what happens when plants die? Animals and people die. Our big risk on the CO2 concentration in the atmosphere is getting it too low. Because when the dinosaurs lived, and we didn't have any deserts, we had forests everywhere. There was 15 to 18 times as much CO2 in the atmosphere as there is now. So don't let anybody tell you that we're endangering the planet because we're putting CO2 in the atmosphere. It's total bullshit. It's being used. The reason they're doing it is they're using it to control you. And I'll tell you, on any of this stuff, follow the money and you find the answer.
So,
On your question, here's the thing. I did it for years. I did a thing at Oshkosh. Everybody know what Oshkosh is? Yeah. Okay. I give a talk that had no title. It was Q&A. And what I do is I'd stand up there. I may give a little 5 minutes on a new airplane I might have there, but the whole talk was Q&A. And I said to the person, I don't have a screener. So I'm going to screen. Okay? And if you ask a question that I think the answer would not be that interesting to the audience, I won't waste their time. I will just hang up on you. Okay? So I'm going to wait for somebody to ask a question in which I think the answer might be of interest to most of you, and then I'll answer that. So don't be...
No pressure on your next.
No. Please, let me finish. If you ask me a question, I hang up on you. What that means, come up and see me after we're done, and I'll answer it privately because I won't be boring everybody else.
Yeah, we had a hand here, and then Kurt's going to run the mic around too.
My question is, I just met a young engineering student here, and what advice would you give him to transition from, say, a conventional engineer to somebody who thinks like you, who's innovative, who pushes things forward?
Are you saying transition in his job or to what job to take?
Well, not necessarily what job to take, how to think. I mean, what caused you to go from, say, just engineering?
Okay, I'll tell you, if your boss does not let you try something that looks nonsensical, and you have it in your heart, and you want to try it to make a breakthrough, get another job.
Okay.
Yeah,
Fair enough.
it's a great answer. Yeah, a couple hands out here.
Excuse me, if you don't get another job, you're doing something to yourself that's awful, and that is you're going to have a boring career.
Morgan wants a question, and then we're going to keep going around.
All right. So I talked to you when I was in 6th grade, and you did a speech at the Coeur d'Alene Library. That started my entrepreneurial career and created so much momentum in my life. And I asked you about 0-point energy and dark energy and what you thought of that, and you had an awesome response. Now, 7 years later, what do you think is the future of space travel?
You want me to tie in 0-point energy with the future of space travel? I'm confused.
Not required. Just what are you so super excited about the future of space travel?
Oh, the future of space travel. Well, I'm just hopeful that this tiny number of people that have done such wonderful things, Musk, of course, is top of the list. I'm a big fan of Musk.
Yeah.
Huge fan. I first met him and went to a shop when he had 15 people. He's given me personal tours of his facility, building Falcons and motors. And I have twice been trapped in a tiny room with just Elon Musk and I for 5 hours. Trapped, can't get out. Just Musk and I. He had asked me, first of all, this is just after he finally had a successful flight with Falcon 1, not Falcon 9. Okay. Remember, if that didn't work, he was going to give up.
Yeah.
He had been nominated for the Collier Trophy, which is the big Oscar of aerospace. And in those days, he hadn't yet discovered that he's actually a very good public speaker. If you see him give a talk in those days, it's very clumsy. he doesn't use the techniques that he does now, which make him an interesting speaker. Okay? And he asked me, he said, if I pick you up in my business jet and fly you to Washington, D.C., will you give the presentation to the judges for the Collier Trophy so that I could win the most prestigious trophy in aerospace? And I said, you damn right, you're paying for it, right? I got in his business jet. We stayed in the fanciest hotel in Washington, D.C. And we went over to this place where we're out in a lobby, and there's, first of all, it's only, they don't give you, what is it, Dick? Is it 10 or 12 minutes? Somebody wake up Dick. But anyway, they can ask questions to extend it, but they allow you only 10 minutes. So I'm taking Elon Musk's 10 minutes to convince these judges, and there's like 40 of them out there, maybe more. And I didn't really know that they had already decided who won.
It was him.
No,
Somebody else.
he didn't win.
Oh.
I gave the presentation. I thought I did a great job. And then you find out a week later who won, right? Well, who won that year was the International Space Station team. Now, what breakthrough thing did they do that year? It's supposed to be your accomplishments in a given year. Well, some genius back in Washington, and I'll tell you, there's a lot of them because that place is filled with lobbyists and lawyers, and I go there only under duress. And I wash myself when I get home. Some genius down there realized that the International Space Station, this huge project, had never been given the Collier Trophy. Well, of course, the Collier Trophy should be given to people. Wright brothers never got the Collier Trophy, but Glenn Curtiss got 2. Kelly Johnson, my real hero for airplanes, got 2. I'm the only one alive that has 2 Colliers for individual accomplishment for the Voyager and for SpaceShipOne. But anyway, Elon Musk, to show you a little bit about his character. He was so mad that they gave it to this big government team that he refused to let anybody nominate him for the Collier. And to this day, even though he's done this spectacular stuff, he doesn't have a Collier Trophy. Bezos has a Collier Trophy.
That's funny.
But not Elon Musk. And that's kind of weird. If we had a lot of time, I'd talk to you about this new space stuff because I'll just tell you what books to read. My good friend Mark Stuckey, his call sign is Forger. He was my chief test pilot for Spaceship Two. Then
Does he have a book?
I'm about to tell you.
Oh, okay.
Then he went to work for Virgin Galactic because they took over the program. And he wrote a book called Test Gods. Excuse me, a writer is a writer for the New Yorker magazine. Wrote this book, Nicholas Schmidl is the writer's name, and the book is called Test Gods. And because this wonderful book with lots in it, had just a couple or 3 sentences that were derogatory to Sir Richard Branson. Sir Richard Branson fired him. handed him an envelope with a lot of money. Says, here, I want you to have this gift. And you open the envelope, there's this big check for a lot of money, and it says, to accept this, you have to promise to never talk to anyone about what happens at Virgin Galactic. And he tore it up and threw it on the table and walked out. Technically, the very best book about SpaceShipOne is what we call M&M. It's called The Magic and Menace. Menace, you know what, did you understand menace? The Magic and Menace of SpaceShipOne. And it's written by Brian Binney, one of the 2 astronauts that I made in my SpaceShipOne program. He flew the flight, the only perfect flight without an anomaly. And I had him run the rocket engine a lot longer so that he could fly higher than the X-15 ever did. Brian is a wonderful friend, and the most enjoyable book you may ever read if you're interested in SpaceShipOne is called Magic and Menace of SpaceShipOne. Actually, the book also has sections about his he was a carrier pilot during Desert One, and you know, more things about his life and so on. But he digs real deep into the issues of pilot selection for these flights. But the beautiful thing about M&M is the illustrations, and Brian did them all himself. Oh, by the way, Brian didn't have a co-writer.
Oh, really?
He's got multiple doctorate degrees, I think. I hired him first as a program manager, not as a test pilot. But anyway, Brian's absolutely a brilliant writer, and he wrote every word himself, and he made all these super graphics himself.
I think we've got time maybe for like 2 more questions. Go ahead.
And one other book.
Yeah.
I got Test Gods and Magic and Menace.
Magic and Menace.
The other one just came out recently, and it's about a detailed story of Musk on his early flights of Falcon 1, and the book is called Lift Off. Lift Off.
Okay.
You'll enjoy that one. I'm reading it now.
Okay.
Yeah, I have sort of 2 questions and a statement, actually. One of them is a bit more about general aviation. What do you think about the application of rotary engines in light aircraft?
Rotary engines?
Yeah, rotary engines.
Talk to me about it later, because almost nobody else here would be interested. What's your second question?
Give me a sec. I thought it was earlier, and then I forgot.
You said you had 2 questions.
Oh, yes, about the Constellation program, because you were talking about Apollo, and so everyone in the aerospace industry is super excited about having proper funding for once. The Constellation program.
The Constellation program. We're talking about the government NASA program of, what was it, 12, 15 years ago?
Yeah.
The one that didn't get anywhere?
Yeah. Do you think if it had progressed, if it did, would it have actually succeeded, and would that have been a good thing?
Absolutely no. And it goes without saying that it wouldn't have been a good thing because it would not have succeeded. And the reason it was run by NASA, whose primary role is to get the most work into the largest number of congressional districts as possible, so that those people will vote for the NASA funding in order to keep that money coming in, those jobs coming in. And when that's your priority, You're not going to the moon. You're not doing anything useful. They spend more money on diversity than they do on things that would build a new rocket. And they don't seem to have any interest in going to the moon. Of course, if they did, they're going to be the fourth person there, and the third one will be speaking Chinese.
As just sort of a, I know I'm taking far too long, I'm very sorry. I know I am just 15, but sort of when I was younger, I used to get...
You're only 15?
Yes?
Wait a minute. Wait a
He's
minute.
sober, 15 and tall.
Who's the 15-year-old person talking? I thought it was that guy sitting down.
Right here.
You've been asking me the questions?
Yes, I have.
Oh, okay. I thought it was the other guy. I'm sorry. By the way, you guys look really dark out there.
All right, I'll just go sit back down.
No. Stand right here. Stand right here.
All right. I just want to say, when I was younger, I used to get these magazines from my grandfather. He lives here. He used to fly. He was a pilot for most of his life. And he used to have the EAA magazines, Experimental Aircraft Association. And every other airplane I saw, it was a Rutan design. Mm-hmm. Basically half of them were all your design.
Well, I've been a lifetime member of EAA since 1970, and it's a wonderful organization. The event they have every year is called Air Venture, and if you look at the number of attendees who show up that week, you can argue that it's the world's largest convention.
Wow.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Other questions?
Yeah. We'll take a couple more.
If you don't have a mic, just holler.
I have a question.
Are you 15 years old? I literally cannot see you.
There you go, Jim. You got it.
It's right here.
Oh, right here. Wait, right here. Okay.
I've got a question for you. I know it's complete nonsense, but on small engine aircraft, if you could, because they're designed based upon how much power they have and how much fuel they consume. I know it's complete nonsense, but could you talk about what it would mean if you could increase the power significantly and burn less fuel? What would that do for the design of aircraft?
Well, of course, everybody that's been developing airplanes since, certainly in my lifetime, tries to increase the efficiency. First of all, propellers are real good ones, about 91% efficient, so you're not going to get much there. The reciprocating engine that uses gasoline has a lot of power. You get all the power you want, but its specific fuel consumption is especially at low powers, is about 0.5 to 0.7 not gallons per hour, that's fuel flow. Somebody help me with this, it's crazy. Well, it's specific fuel consumption, and how efficient it uses the gasoline is actually very low. Reciprocating engines throw away a lot of heat, and that's wasted. So I don't see that Cessna or Beechcraft's going to come out with an airplane that'll go faster that has twice the range, because you have to do it with aerodynamics. If you make an airplane that looks more like a motor glider, there's real long wings and extremely smooth so it doesn't have much parasitic drag. That's where the biggest benefit could be. If you make real long wings, then it doesn't fit in hangars. So I'll tell you, frankly, I gotta say, I did a lot of general aviation airplanes. Most of them were for home builders, things like Long Easy, Very Easy, Defiant, Solitaire, those things. I sold like 16,000 sets of plans. Wow. And about 1,500 airplanes actually got done and built. That's not unusual, by the way. If you look at the number of people that start building a home-built airplane, only about 8 or 10% of them ever fly it, because it's a lot more work than they think. And I kept a statistic in my first company, the Rutan Aircraft Factory, and I found that statistically what it takes to build your own airplane is about 1.6 wives.
All right.
No, that's not it. I took the,
Let's do here, and then snag Chris, and then Jim, and then Burt. You're gonna hang out.
But where I was going there, I got bored with general aviation airplanes after I started doing space stuff. So I haven't even followed your question. I haven't even followed the progress lately. It's not interesting to me.
And then Burt, you're gonna hang out for a little bit. You said after.
I stay up till 1 in the mornings a lot.
There you go.
I've been having trouble sleeping lately.
There you go. So we'll take a couple more questions, and then I'll wrap it up. But
What time is it anyway?
Burt, I'm Burt. Is this in live? Burt, I'm not 15. However, I did bring my 17-year-old daughter, who is a senior in high school. She's just been accepted to 6 different colleges in aerospace engineering.
Woo! What college?
Well, she's looking at Embry-Riddle. She's looking at University of Arizona. Stanford is still flopping around out there. We don't know what's going to happen, but that's not the question. I think she came here because she wanted to look at you. I think maybe she wanted to see.
She came here tonight?
She's right here, the cutest adorable little girl in the world. But she wants to know. She wants to know what happens to all aerospace engineers, so that's why she wanted to see you. And also, here's the question she wants to ask is, when you think back of all of your projects, which one do you remember that you had the most fun?
You know, a lot of people ask me during my career with airplanes, somebody would come up and say, what's your favorite of all your airplanes? Until 2005, I always answered the next one. See, that's kind of a trick because I don't tell you what the next one is until it flies. But it was saying that I was always searching to do ones that were more fun. However, after SpaceShipOne did its space flights, and we did without even the government knowing. By the way, that program was 3.5 years long. The first 2 years it was covert. Nobody outside our little company knew that we were doing a space program. I didn't want a lot of help. After SpaceShipOne, the answer to that question, my favorite airplane and the most fun was SpaceShipOne.
why?
Because I reasoned, and I still think it's true, that in my lifetime, there's no way I will do anything as significant as that. Because I went from a handshake with Paul Allen, and he gave me a very small amount of money, and I flew 3 of the world's 5 space flights in 2004. And to do something that's more significant than that, would mean, well, first of all, I'm not healthy enough to even build a company now. I've had some pretty serious health problems just recently, a low ejection fraction of 31%. If I climb those stairs out there, I'll be tired. And I've got an indication that my defibrillator almost shocked me after doing nothing for 22 years. So I'm a little bit scared. One of the things that bothered me when I was talking to my family about what to do with Brad if I'm not around, I looked up the average age of people that had my heart history. In 2008, I had an operation for constrictive pericardium. I was undiagnosed. I went downhill. I thought I was dying. They finally diagnosed it, ripped me open, and took off the pericardium while the heart's beating. It took them 5 hours. Wonderful guy. He came up to look at the spaceship too later. But anyway, if you look at the people that had that history, they die on the average at an age that's quite a bit younger than me. So that's kind of scary. I'm working on bonus time, right? And I didn't realize that until just recently. I don't know, that's not something you want to think about how long you're going to live. But if I was completely healthy my whole life, what is my average age of death? Is it, 80? I don't know. Somebody that knows, tell me. It's 80, 83, 84. Okay, that's good. Oh God, that's my brother's age. But anyway, if you look at my morbidity, heart issues, I should have died.
You're on borrowed time, man.
I'll tell you something else that I found very interesting. I'm alive because some things got invented in time to use on me. The defibrillator implanted, the stent. I had a blockage, the only one I ever had, in 1998. I calculated once that if I had been born 18 years earlier, I would have died in my 50s. Isn't that scary? I did a lot of shit after I was 50. So I'm an enormous fan of medical technology. I certainly hope that we won't be hampered by having Canada's or England's medical service. Well, it's not innovation. It's how they spread it out. Oh, you were making a joke. Oh, sorry. I missed it again. God damn it. Okay, another question.
Kurt, we got a question over here. Yeah.
He's coming.
He's coming.
So what do you think the most challenging part of designing anything with utilizing the
Hold the mic closer.
So what do you think the most challenging part of designing any aircraft that uses like the canard layout of control surfaces on an aircraft?
What's the most challenging thing about designing a new airplane? Is that what you're asking? But you're tying it to the canard configuration? Okay, well, first of all, my first 4 or 5 airplanes were canard ones. I thought I had very good reason for doing that. I found out later when I got smarter that they weren't necessarily good reasons. They are safer in that they don't stall and spin. That was my big mantra. I actually designed my first canard one when I was in college, and I flew it as a radio control model. I was a big fan because the Swedish Viggen made its first flight. And I was enthralled by that. And I wanted so much to design. I built a little wind tunnel model of a canard in college. But anyway, I don't remember it as it ever being a challenge. It was the easiest thing there was to do. I really don't. Now, a challenge certainly would be SpaceShipOne, because I had to go through transonic and supersonic speeds, and I didn't have the money and time to do wind tunnel testing. Well, that's risky, and it's also a big challenge. But those canard airplanes, to me, were easy to do. But when the very easy, flown by my brother, flew into the Oshkosh Convention, biggest convention in the world, in 1975. It created an absolute sensation with the people. On the other hand, my very best general aviation airplane clearly is the Boomerang. And to find out why, you just Google Rutan Boomerang and find out. However, when it flew into Oshkosh the first time, and I rolled it up so they could see the plan form, somebody sent me one of their videos that they took of it being introduced at Oshkosh, and the people within earshot of the camera were laughing. But it is by far my best work in general aviation. And I don't have time to tell you why, but you can find out why.
I love that. And then, go ahead. So, what do you think the applications of any newly developed technology in that area could be used for, and the eventual potential of that?
When you say in that area, you're talking about canards still?
Like your canards or any new airfoil concepts?
Well, you see canard surfaces on many modern fighters now. But again, I don't claim to be the inventor of canard airplanes. I mean, even the Wright brothers had one, kind of a lousy one. But you know something that I did fly first before anyone? You know, airliners had kind of plain wingtips, and then later they had these things that go up and a little thing that comes down. Winglet. I have a chapter in Brab about winglets. And the reason is they were designed by Whitcomb. Whitcomb published this in Aviation Week magazine at a time when I was designing my very easy canard airplane. And I was just going to put vertical fins at the wingtips because that was the farthest thing back. And I looked carefully at what he showed, and I said, my gosh, I could get better range, more efficiency if I shape that wing and put the little lower wing on per this NASA scientist. So I did it, and within 2-3 months, I was the first one ever to fly winglets on an airplane. Now, somebody took a sport aviation magazine and they showed it to Whitcomb, the NASA scientist. And it was a picture of it flying over. And you know, he looked at that and says, "Bah! No, it takes engineers at Lockheed, or at least Beechcraft, to be able to properly apply my invention so that it lowers the induced drag." This is a home builder in Mojave with 2 employees, plus his wife The mini-skirted one was a great employee, by the way. I'd do that again in a heartbeat. And so I got Whitcomb openly criticizing me as being, well, this dumb shit probably didn't do it right. Okay? And that kind of bothered me a little bit. It didn't seem to affect my ability to sell plans for very easy, so I, 2 years later, I was at Oshkosh, and I went out the flight line, and somebody says, "Hey, Burt, that's Whitcomb, and he's looking at your airplane." So I went over there, and as I approached him, he actually had his hands feeling the camber of the lower winglet and looking down to see the camber and angle of the upper winglet. And I introduced myself. And he turned to me and openly apologized. Wow. He says, you have properly used. He says, I didn't think you would know anything about aerodynamics just looking at, you don't work for an aerospace company. But I want to apologize because you actually have done the proper application of my invention. So of course I also talk about sheared wingtips now, which are ones that sweep out to a point. At any rate, if you want to learn everything about winglets, look at the chapter in Brab about winglets. Shortly after I got here, and a fellow mentioned it, I gave a talk at the library. Well, actually, I gave a talk up at the Bird Museum. Everybody know where that is? And somebody in the audience, Forrest Bird was a wonderful friend. He was just had his 90th birthday at the time. But anyway, I gave a talk there, and somebody in the audience was a person that got to go to the Thanksgiving dinner every year for Charlie Knudsen. Wayne Knudsen founded the Chevy dealership in Post Falls. And because of that, it sprouted out. All of my wife's friends came out of that. She has Blazing Divas, there's like 60 women in that. And, so it's, just something like when I gave that library talk, all of a sudden I met a bunch of people I never would have met. So it's weird, but I'm giving a talk here and he's not even paying me.
It's free beer and an elevator ride. Give Burt a hand.
Okay, you bet.
I really do.
Well, I've really enjoyed, and first of all, you've brought a perfect audience. I got a picture of everybody.
Yeah.
And
good looking people. Bunch of nerds.
I thought you were going to have it upstairs in that great big thing, but this is a much nicer.
This room was better. 2 hours and hang out with you. This was.
By the way, this bar is the original bar from when the
over 100 years old.
Who had the building?
Elks.
The Elks had this building, and it was just fallen down, and they totally renovated it into the Innovation Den, and they kept the bar from 100 years ago.
Yeah. It was abandoned for 30 years, and now it's full of a bunch of people who believe in nonsense, and let's keep the legacy going. So please get involved in what we're doing. Talk to myself, talk to Kurt, come to the Fireside Chats, the other events, but most importantly, make new friends in this room and build new things together. So have fun, grab a beer, enjoy your night.